All right, back on the morning drive on this Thursday morning, finishing my morning banana breakfast. Counting these calories is a lot of fun, folks. Let me tell you. 241-1059 is our number on the morning drive. Brought to you by our good friends at Valdosta Toyota, where they simply have deals up and down the lot. It's almost hard to keep count of them. But with everything you get, a 2-year, 25,000-mile, no charge factory maintenance program. Again, you can go to ValdostaToyota.com, click on the Camry Effect button, and submit your Camry story, and you could win yourself a new Camry and one to give to your best friend. 2 for 1. You got to love it. Over 250 new and pre-owned vehicles to choose from, and all pre-owned vehicles that have been reconditioned like new with a 6-year or a 100,000-mile Toyota warranty. 247-1920, 2980 James Road. You know where they are at Valdosta Toyota. And Governor Nathan Deal, when asked about his thoughts on the possibility of Georgia drug testing its citizens who receive unemployment benefits, he said, I think it's something that I would certainly entertain. I think the problem that you have is making sure that they are administered fairly and that you don't have political overtones. He said, now, when I was a U.S. congressman, I supported similar requirements at the federal level for welfare benefits. He said, I don't think it's ever really been addressed in the statutes with regard to unemployment. Obviously, there's going to be some potential challenges. You've got to address who you're going to pay for it. You don't want repeated testing to be done. Now, of course, if you go to apply for a job with a government job and many private industry jobs, you're going to be drug tested by your future employers. It's become pretty standard. If that test can be adapted to apply to unemployment insurance as well, then the governor said the burden on the jobless wouldn't be that great. However, Florida, as you know, recently passed the same kind of a law tying unemployment benefits to drug testing. It's been blocked by a federal judge, and some legislators believe, well, that's slowing down why we're not pursuing it here in Georgia. Why go through the motions if it's simply going to be blocked at the federal level? So that remains to be seen. And I do think there are some kinks in it, but obviously you want to make sure that it's feasible, number one. We don't want it to cost it. It can't be a cash cow or gouging the state for cash, especially in this kind of time, although the latest economic reports are good, and that's good. We want to keep that going. We're not there yet. And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think we'll ever get back to where we were. But we can get better. And maybe we will. Let's be optimistic. But not with the kind of thinking that Jimmy Carter has. Jimmy. Former President Jimmy Carter, I'll make sure I get this story, commenting on the Occupy movement. I think when I spoke of the Occupy movement, I asked someone to show me anything that it did. Well, former President Jimmy Carter said yesterday that Occupy organizers created a relatively successful movement because they focused the national discussion on wealth disparity despite not having any leadership or unifying set of goals. He said that they forced the media and Congress to realize, and I'm quoting the former president here, the chasm is getting greater than leaps and bounds between the rich and the poor. Really? Did they? I didn't get that from them, but I guess myself and the former president feel differently. Hello, caller. Good morning.
What do you think of newspaper? You think it holds water?
Excuse me?
Newspaper on cutting back the judiciary, cutting them back to within limits. You can impeach them and so forth. They can be subpoenaed before Congress.
No.
Historically, it's been done, you know.
Yeah, I don't.
If Congress and the president decided they didn't like something that the judiciary branch did, they could gang up on them.
Yeah, that's a bad idea.
That is part of the separation of powers. No, not separation of powers. Well, actually, yes, I think it is.
I think it's a violation of the separation of powers.
That's a check.
No, I think it's a violation.
They all check each other.
Yeah, but I think it's a violation of the separation of the three branches of government. Yeah, I mean that's legislative and judicial are two entirely separate.
They have to be able to check each other in order to function properly and not get out of hand and not.
Well, then who checks? Then who checks the politicians?
Courts are sovereign.
Say that?
Who's the sovereign? Are the courts our sovereign?
I think they're all sovereign in their own entities. If you're going to have the politicians and the public servants check the courts and be able to recall or whatever they want,
And the courts.
then who's going to check the politicians?
Check the Congress, and the Congress and the courts could check the president. That's kind of how it works.
But I don't think they're recalling them. I don't think what Newt Gingrich is talking about is a good idea, because I think that overextends the power. Hold on a second. I think it overextends the power of your elected officials, and I think there are certain checks and balances in place, but I think doing it that way is going to overextend their power.
I believe they should be able to subpoena them, and I believe they should be able to remove them if they, do stuff that they're not supposed to do, that's outside the scope of what originally was set up.
But now who determines that? Who determines what they're not supposed to do? Because you know as well as I do, that's going to turn into a political nightmare. It's going to be whoever they disagree with. If I disagree with what you say, then I'm going to rule you out.
It was laid out, and it was all written down. It's like, do you have rules at home? Do you have them written down so that, like when your kids were little, so you could refer, no, honey, this is the rule you broke, and this is what has to happen because of it, so forth and so on. It was all written down. That's the basis of our Constitution and so forth.
But my house is a dictatorship. My house is not a democracy. I am the dictator. My wife and I dictate our house. Our kids don't have equal vote.
You have some rules, I take it, and you remind the kids of those rules when they get in trouble. You don't just slap down a punishment or a discipline or anything and not tell them what they're being disciplined for and so forth.
That's not happening now, though.
I don't know about the recall. I'd have to do a little bit more research on that, but I do believe that they should be able to be subpoenaed and they should be able to be impeached. It was right there in all the original.
Or how about this?
Or
how about this? You can simply, you could just, sir, I'll agree if you have repeated offenses, but I think what this would turn into is, okay, I disagree with your decision, and now we're going to bring you in here. It would be a nightmare.
Well,
it would be an absolute nightmare.
Say if say Congress passed a law, and the court said, no, you can't do that. Well, if Congress and the president came back and said, just repassed and said, yes, we are going to do this, then the law stands. But if that wasn't the case, that means that the power no longer rests with people. See, that the judiciary was supposed to be the weakest branch and the least danger to our liberty. But the way it's become, they've tried to grab so much power up, and Congress has allowed it. You know why Congress was endowed with most of the power? Is because it's closest to the people, and the people can get at them the easiest. But the judiciary, it was not so. You don't want so much power residing in a place that the people cannot get to, because that kind of goes against the 9th and 10th, where basically says that any rights not listed. I'm paraphrasing. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Not listed here reside in the states and the people, respectively. All the power emanates from the people. We have allowed them to serve us. We have vested them with certain powers, and if they are abusive, it is our right and no duty to correct that.
I agree with that. And I'm going to get to another call, but I appreciate your point, and point well made. And I agree with that. If they are abusive, certainly some action needs to be taken. But when you look at what Newt Gingrich is talking about, and what he said was, if we disagree with what they're saying, we're going to bring them in and subpoena them and bring them before the Congress. And I think if you get to that level of it, it's going to be so easy to do that. I don't think that's a good precedent to set. There are things in place. There are checks and balances in place, certainly, and there need to be. But I think it would become a political nightmare. 241-1059 is our number. Hey, caller, go ahead.
Hey, good morning. It was great to hear some conversation about the Supreme Court, and I believe the purpose of the Supreme Court is to provide constitutional review, whether things are unconstitutional or not. But I really feel that lifetime terms is really unnecessary. I would think there should be a mandatory retirement age of, 75 or something, to where we can get some turnover before some of these justices get so old that you just wonder if they are still capable of rendering reasonable decisions for today's world. What do you think?
I cannot agree with that more. And because I do think that anytime you have a lifetime appointment, except for the Pope, and that's the Catholic Church's deal, so they can do whatever but I'm saying, when you're talking about I think there should be, in any governmental office, be it the courts or the legislative offices, there has to be some type of, I just don't agree with lifetime appointments, because quite honestly, if it's totally on them, I mean, think about it, and goodness knows, thank the good Lord, we haven't had this happen, but let's say you have a judge who's 95 years old and suffering from dementia, God forbid, but is still there on the, I mean, that's a bad precedent. Now, I don't think that's a good idea. I think there should be a mandatory retirement age. And that's really, when I talk about what's going to happen in November, that's one of the big things that I talk about, because we're going to have, in the next 4 years, I believe, 2 more appointments to the Supreme Court. I think we'll have some people come off. And the power of a president to appoint a Supreme Court justice is one of the most under-recognized powers that there are, because the Supreme Court does make rules on laws that do affect you and I every day, and that's an important thing that we need to consider in November. And
also, in particular with this president, is the fact that the Senate, who confirms the nomination, is controlled by the Democrats right now.
Yeah, exactly. So it's for that reason, among lots of others in my mind, November's big, so let's keep that in mind. But I agree with you. No, I do think there needs to be a mandatory retirement age.
Okay.
Thank you, man. Good to hear from you.
All right.
241-1059. We'll take one more call before we go to break. Hey, caller, good morning. Caller. Right. Yeah, hey, you there? Go ahead.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. I was going to say what you were and the lady a minute ago were arguing about the Constitution and about the 3 branches, and it is in effect an argument about the Constitution.
Discussion. Let's call it discussion, not argument.
Well, discussion. But when you say that 2 branches have the power to overcome and, in effect, overthrow the 3rd branch, then you're in effect saying that we should do away with the Constitution. And if the President and the Congress don't like what the Constitution says, they can change it, because the courts don't really matter, and the courts, it's their job to uphold the Constitution. And if you get rid of the guardians of the Constitution, then the Constitution no longer matters.
And they have they can change the Constitution. They can make amendments to the Constitution.
Exactly.
Yes.
But the amendment process is so long and drawn out, with either state legislatures calling conventions, or, as they've done in the past, supermajority of Congress. If they change the Constitution, then that's different, because that obviously, that would go through a long media turnout, and the public would either support or, not support it. But if they're just going to just do away with what we have now, then that's not right. And I think the courts should be, supported. And it's not true that they're the weakest branch at all. The Constitution says they're equal.
Right, exactly. And it should be. So,
yes, sir.
Hey, I appreciate your call, man. Thanks a lot.
No problem.
Great discussion. We'll talk about it more. We got to get away to a break. Got your Wall Street Journal report coming up, but this is a very interesting discussion, and I love that people are so enthralled with how government works. We need to be. We need to know more about it. We need to be active in what we say about it, and we're going to do that when we come back. Right after this, it's the Morning Drive, brought to you by Valdosta Toyota on News Talk 105.9. This is WVGA.